I'm so deeply honored and grateful that you're joining me for a fresh approach to painting, Gateway to the Inner Artist. Pour Me One, we're painting Flowing Time, which is an artwork that has been exhibited in the Netherlands for environmental issues. By pouring paintings, we have to first create our paint, then pour it onto the canvas to create images. Mixing the paint. Learning to make your own paint and the chemistry of paint is an important aspect of fine art painting. We're going to use containers from the dollar store, which are nice square containers. The reason I use square is they have a natural edge for pouring. Also, these Darcy bottles, or just a squeeze bottle with a point. Now, these come with a plastic point not yet cut, so you can use a scissors and snip off the edge on an angle and create a sharp point for pouring or drawing with paint. I'm using a metal pan. This looks familiar to you, I'm sure. It's the oven pan. So items from the kitchen are very helpful. So what we're going to do first is show you how to make your own paint. Now, why would you bother making your own paint when you can buy it? These are the colors that we'll use with the golden high flow paint. So one reason is saving money. It's a value to make your own paint. But the other more important reason is you have limited colors when you buy store-bought paint. You can make any color in the spectrum if you learn to make your own paint. So to make my paint, I'm going to take some yellow, either soft body or heavy body paint, put it in a small square container, pour in some airbrush medium, and some water. Be careful not to splash your clothes. With a spatula. I don't use a brush because if I'm stirring this with a brush, it's going to get up into the ferrule, and we learned not to allow the paint to get into the metal part of the brush. So now I have successfully made my paint. I'll continue with the colors that are required for this particular painting. So I made my 3 colors that I need for this painting, and I'm on my green. Now when I make my green, I'm going to put hooker green into this container. Now the hooker green is the heavy body. It's going to have some clumps. I'm not going to completely get rid of all my clumps. So when I stir this, I'm going to look and see that, yes, I've got a few clumps. That's okay. I'm not going to smooth it out 100%. You're going to see why we're leaving those small clumps when we do the actual pouring, but only in the green mixture that we've made. Now we need to make our 3 squeeze bottles. We're going to use this for pouring, and we'll also use this for focusing direction of the paint while we're pouring. That's why you need that sharp point. So what you do is you open the Darcy bottle and you make it the same way you made it in the small square containers. Take some Indian yellow, put it in the bottle, put in some airbrush medium. Other mediums don't work, so don't try to do this with heavy mediums or varnishes. Only the airbrush medium made by Golden that I've found works the best. So you'll put that in the bottle and you'll put some water. And what I've done is I've made about half a bottle of each of the colors that I need. So while my paints are all put together in their containers waiting for me to get started with my pouring, I need to prepare the canvas. First thing I'm going to do is dip into my red and make a straight line all the way down. So I'm purposely not using a ruler. when drawing this red line, and think of this as a knife. So we're going to make it wider at the top. I've made one complete row. Now I'm going to go off to the side and have it narrow down to a point, or the best part of a point. This does not have to look perfect, because when you're completely done, you are going to go over it again. There you have it. Now you've got a straight line on one side and you have an angled line on the other side. Very happy with that knife now. Let me clean my brush, and I'm going to go into the blue. The next thing we're going to do is do our blue area next to the knife. We don't want to touch the red because it's still wet. So I'm going to go right next to that knife all the way down to the bottom to give myself a bearing as to where I'm putting the blue. I'm going to paint my blue in on the left side, and then I'm going to go to the right side, get some more water on my brush because it's not going on as even as I would like it to. And I'm going to go on the opposite side of that knife. One important thing while you're painting this blue in is get the wide areas done. Now when you get close to this red, you're going to have a natural overlap. And let's show you what happens when you do that. I'm going to touch my red with my blue brush. Careful not to contaminate the blue, but by getting close to my red, which I need to fill in all the white, I have created a natural shadow. So I'm going to use my brush to make my point even sharper. And where it touches the red, magic happens because you now have a shadow. So the next thing I'm going to do is change brushes. I've decided that I'm going to use a foam brush, a nice wet foam brush. And I'm going to paint white over this blank area of the canvas. Need some more water, so I'll spray some water. So I want this area to be nice and wet when I start pouring. And I'm going to do the same thing to this side. Nice and wet. Excellent. Okay, now I'm ready to pour. So I'm going to take my oven pan to catch the drips and place it under my canvas. And I'm going to hold the canvas away from me. There we go. I'm prepared. And I'm going to open the containers of the colors that I want to use. I'm going to use this handy dandy container that I saved from my kitchen. This way, when I pour with my containers, I don't make a mess on my table. It'll catch all the drips from the containers. I've got my 4 colors: yellow, green, dark green, white, all ready to pour. So start from the top, and first pour the dark green. Don't be afraid. The next thing I'm going to do is pour some yellow. And a little of the light green. Okay, start from the top, and it's naturally flowing down. So I'm going to take my spray bottle and spray. Gently, not too much water, because I want it to cover the whole area. And then lift and watch that pour. Now, pouring, just like abstract painting, is spontaneous, but it's not haphazard. I have a plan as to where I want my colors to go. You see, I painted the red and the blue. Now I'm using specific greens to complement those reds and blues. So it definitely has a plan. So you can see through this process that I have a plan. I didn't just throw paint at the canvas. I'm specific as to what colors I'm using, where I'm placing my colors. The greens and the yellows are complements on the color wheel to the blues and reds. So I'm not haphazard as to how I'm pouring. Just like in abstract painting, pouring painting has a plan. So I've chosen carefully the colors initially that I want to use. The greens are opposite the color wheel to the red. So they will complement each other. Now earlier in the setup videos, I explained that you want to let the paint dry before putting more paint on because you'll end up with mud. Well, in pouring, you want a degree of that mud to happen organically or spontaneously. So now I've done one layer. I'm going to continue with my greens and completely fill in the areas that are white. Continue to pour, and these will naturally fill up the white areas. Now when I'm done with that right side, I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing on the left side. And I'm slightly overlapping. Not too much, but overlapping. I'm leaving a little bit to chance, but not too much. I definitely, as you can see, have a plan with my pouring. We are pouring with paint, an airbrush medium, and water. My next two colors are white and Indian yellow. So I'll take my Indian yellow in my small Darcy bottle, and I'm going to just pour by using a squeeze bottle that with a point. I'm getting a whole different shape in my pouring. Excellent, because that's exactly what I want. Now I'm going to use white. And pour some white over this. Take my squeeze bottle, and I'm going to carefully and with some intentional plan, I'm going to add my white. I'm going to go into the blue on this side. Pick up my other colors, add some more yellow in. This is where you get creative. This is up to you how you're going to do this. With my squeeze bottle, create more flow. When I'm totally happy with what I have, and I know you're thinking, this is a big mess. It doesn't look great at all. Well, it will when it dries, because remember, acrylic paint dries darker and it takes on a whole different shape. So keep spraying, dripping, letting it dry, and putting layers on until you're absolutely 100% happy. So remember we talked about those hooker green clumps? Now's the time I'm going to show you what to do with those clumps. While my canvas is still wet, I'm going to pick up a brush with a chiseled edge, meaning it comes to a flat edge, and I'm going to move the paint with the brush, but I'm moving like this, giving my paint some shape, and there we go, and pulling the green clumps into wherever there's a clump. I'm just going to pull it down, give my painting some shape and direction. Again, pouring is not haphazard. It has purpose. And this just adds interest to my composition. So there we go. Now I'm ready to let that dry. Now that my painting is dry, it's time for me to go back in and make my final touch-ups. I'm going to go back to my palette of red and blue, and in the center of the knife, I'm going to use some deeper color. By putting more color in the center and leaving the sides lighter, my knife is going to take on a three-dimensional image. And while I'm at it, I'm going to touch up my blue and white. Again, just take your time with this and own your painting. Own it by making it your own. So, put in some more blue, touch up my knife, make this point come to a nice, sharp point. Further accentuating the shape of my knife. And by going over the red with the blue, I'm creating an instant shadow.